Hi there. I hope you're enjoying your day today. I'm sharing a card using Simon Says Stamp Sketch Flower Stamp Set here. I love this main floral image because it's so large that it's bigger than a normal 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. And this works perfectly because I'm planning to create a split canvas art card. I love canvas art generally, but I think that when it's split, it adds a very modern effect to a piece of art. So I have a card base ready and I have to figure out what I want the canvas to look like. And it does have to be smaller than the card base. So I'm deciding to trim it down to 3 3/4 height by 4 1/2 for the width. I need to leave enough space between the canvas panels for later because I'm going to leave like a little sliver in between each canvas panel. For my canvas, I'm using that main floral image and stamping it using versified ink on Bristol Smooth paper. And once I set that up, I'm using one of my misty corners to help elevate that so I can stamp this fully. And it's just so I know exactly where to stamp it and where I can re-stamp it if needed. But versified ink usually gets a good impression on the first stamp, so I only do it once. So once I have it set up exactly where I want it, I'll ink up that stamp and carefully stamp this image. Because I'm using VersaFine ink, I make sure to let the ink dry before coloring since this ink does stay wet longer. I'm using Bristol Smooth since I want to use my Zig Clean Color brush markers for coloring today. And for my coloring, I decided that I'm just using two colors and blending them out with each other instead of using a water brush. The two colors will help add dimension to the images, and since I'm doing a bunch of coloring, I'll just pop in a little music while I color, and I'll come back when I'm done to finish off the card. So once I'm finished coloring, this is the scary part, having to cut up your colored image. And it's a little hard to think about, but this is the look I was going for. And sorry I forgot to zoom back out, but I'm taking the image and trimming it down to 4 equal panels. And I'll leave all the dimensions in the description box below. I also decide on a dark navy blue cardstock for the background, and I think that it helps the image pop since I have so much white space left. For the sentiment, I decided I needed something large and thin, so I settled with Mama Elephant's Happy script and Birthday script, and this works perfectly together because it creates the sentiment Happy Birthday. So I'm taping down that navy blue cardstock on my card base and I'm arranging the panels. I decided since this is canvas art, I'm going to add some foam on the back of each of those panels. So I'm rearranging it just to make sure that I have everything, and I'll add these pieces of foam that I pre-cut to the panels just to give that a little dimension and give it more of that canvas art feel. Once I finish adding all that foam to the back of the colored images, I'll go ahead and work on the sentiment. So I actually wanted it to be gold because I think that it would have popped better versus just white since there's so much white space on the colored image anyway. So I'm adding Versamark ink directly onto the sentiment and dipping it to the gold embossing powder. And since the sentiment is so thin, I have to go in a couple of times just to make sure all the parts of the sentiment are covered up. And I'll use my heat gun to set all these. So you'll see me doing this quite a few times just so I make sure the entire sentiment is covered with that embossing powder and it heat embosses nicely. So it adds a really cool effect to the sentiment itself and it helps make it pop. So I'll do the same with the birthday, and I don't show it, but I have the little dot for the eye, and I also heat emboss that too. And that was a little tricky, but you just have to be super careful you don't lose it in the gold embossing powder, but it's very doable. So once I finish this sentiment, this card is ready to be put together. So I just carefully add adhesive to the back of each of the card panels. I start with the left and right side of the image just so I know exactly where everything in between will be going. And I'm using my 2 ruler just to help me keep everything straight. Then I move into the center panels and I'll add about 1/8 of an inch between each of these panels, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because the sentiment kind of distracts from the panels itself anyway. So once I have those panels adhered to the card base, I'm adding Tombow Mono Multi Glue on the back of the sentiment. Since it's so skinny, I'm very careful placing it down. I put glue on the entire panel. The glue that's not adhering to any of the panels will dry later, so it doesn't really matter how much glue you're putting on. Once I add the sentiment to the card, I add my acrylic blocks just to sit on top to make sure that everything adheres to the card panel. But this card is done, and it's a very simple card. It's just you kind of have to get over cutting your colored image into pieces. It adds a cool effect to a card, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time for another video. Bye.